we've got Mr. Dwayne Bohac here, who's, this is the second time he's come to meet with me. I appreciate it. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself, so I'm not going to do that. But one of the things I wanted him to come and talk to you about has been the low-income housing. One thing we're very thankful is that you've been very supportive of the low-income housing and helping us kind of reject what's been going on unless we find that there's something that really makes sense. And the last projects that was presented didn't make sense, and there were a lot of people to thank for that, but as well from your side, I think that the first time I met with you, I wasn't really sure how I could use your help. And this was an opportunity to understand how we can use your help. So I know a lot of the residents are here because they're thankful as well, but I'm going to let them talk to you.
Sure.
And then the second issue, I know you've been very active with trying to help cap some of the tax for those that have a homestead. There's a 10% increase that they're capable of levying on us, and capping that to more to be a 5%. And been working on exemptions and things to help our taxes to be a lot lower. And I don't know if you could just touch a little bit on that as well. I think those are two very good issues that affect us as homeowners. And this is me taking off my Deerfield hat, putting on, I'm a resident here. We're all volunteers. And so we appreciate the work that you guys do as well, you and your team. Just a quick introduction. You know me, Eric Troy, I'm the DVC board president, for those that don't know. You want to say?
I'm Brian Harris, I'm newly elected to the board.
I'm Arthur McDaniel, I'm the board secretary.
Bruce Bott.
Larry Burke, Vice President.
Brent Burris.
Lewis Carpenter. Sigel Pataki, Board Rep Swim Pool Committee.
All right, good. So at least you have a flavor for everybody here. And then the second guest I want to introduce, and they don't have to come up here, but I have two Boy Scouts from Deerfield's Troop 120 that are back there. That's Michael and Jack, if you'd stand up. Both those young men are working on their Citizen of the Community and Citizen of the Nation badge. And that merit badge requires them to attend the meeting and understand why we have these meetings, figure out an issue that might be going on at the meeting and talk about the pros and cons of the issue, meet an elected official, a government official. So all these things will go towards them earning that merit badge. So they were invited here as well to listen to what you have to say, to also listen to what this board has to say, and look at the interaction that we're having here with the residents of the community, being able to be heard, and both for you and as we do on a monthly basis. So, Dwayne, if you want to come up here and just take my spot and tell a little bit about yourself and address those two issues.
I'll do it, Eric. Thank you very much for having me. I did meet the two scouts. I went to them first when I got here.
Okay.
I have three boys and a girl. One of them has already attained the rank of Eagle Scout, and then one of them is working on his Eagle Scout, and the other one's just getting started in scouting. So I really believe in scouting. I think it puts the right stuff into boys. In fact, I've said before, I probably personally have participated over 100 Eagle Scout presentations in my career, and I usually say the same thing every time. One of my favorite items to note is that if every young man in our state went through scouting, I bet our prisons would be virtually empty. Because at the end of the day, it's about character. And Boy Scouts puts the right character and helps boys become men. And so thank you, Scout Leader, for pouring your time, talent, and treasure into these boys. So, my name is Dwayne Bohac, and I represent you all in the Texas House of Representatives. There's 150 of us members. I represent the 138th piece of the pie, District 138. It roughly begins at Post Oak and I-10, or Silver and I-10, right by the movie theater, so drop just a little red pin there, and then go west down I-10, and then drop a pin at Greenhouse, just a little bit west of here if I'm not turned around, and then roughly go north all the way up to 529 or West Silver York. So it's roughly New Spring Branch, Bear Creek, Katy, and then Cypress. I was born and raised in this area. My parents still live here. I live here. I live at Campbell and I-10 on the north side of I-10. My brother lives in Hearthstone, and my sister lives in Copperfield. So I'm invested in the area and plan on staying here, of course. And I love this community. What does the legislature do? I frequently get asked that. I'll tell you what the legislature does. It does really 4 big things. It educates. It's like a 4-legged table. Educates, it medicates, it takes care of the indigent. It incarcerates, it puts criminals in jail, and it transportates. And I made that up because I'm a Hattie, and I can take liberties. So educate, medicate, incarcerate, and transportate. So everything that we do is built around those elements, from passing our budget to our committee work and so forth. I do serve on 2 committees. I serve on the Public Education Committee, and I serve on the Ways and Means Committee. And Ways and Means Committee is the tax writing, or not tax writing, the way I look at it, committee. And I serve on the Public Education Committee, and that's pre-K through 12. And the legislature did some big things this session. We passed a very conservative budget. It was about $209 billion. So it's roughly about 1/10, roughly, of what the federal government takes in, not spends, but takes in on the federal government side. We have a balanced budget amendment in our state, so we do have to, we can only spend what the controller tells us we're bringing in for a 2-year period. Isn't that novel? And it has to match up dollar for dollar. And that's why Texas, relatively speaking, is in really good shape. We have a low regulatory framework and we have a low tax framework, basically speaking. As you can tell by lots of people who want to move here, that's driving up our real estate prices and certainly putting a strain on our school system, putting a strain on our transportation, and putting a strain on our health care. There are 4 things that state government takes care of. And we put most of our money into border security, transportation, and public education. That's where most of the money went, and tax relief. So those were probably the big 4. Tax relief, border security, public education, and transportation. And the budget reflects those priorities. And with regard to border security, that's an issue that's very important to me and probably important to most of the people in this room. We spent $800 million, which is roughly about a $500 million increase over the last 2-year budget. Because y'all see the issue that we have with the federal government not doing its job. So therefore, we have to do their job. Because it's putting an unbelievable strain on our public education system and our public health system. And of course, all the other areas of government. So anyway, I am for a door on the country. Okay? I'm for legal immigration. But just like a house, you get to determine who comes in. It's just like a country. It's loving for you to determine who comes into your house. It's not unloving just to leave the front doors. It's unloving to leave the front doors open. It's loving right for parents to decide and authorities to decide who comes in the house and who doesn't come in the house, because you got to look at resources and all these other things. Would you agree with that? Yes. You got to have a door. You got to have a door. Transportation, we need about $10 billion a year, every 2 years, to fund basically free roads. In other words, not toll roads are not free because your gas tax pays for the roads. And we really took a big chunk out of that transportation need to make sure our roads stay free, and that allows TxDOT to plan and design and maintain nice non-toll roads. And so with that, we'll get 290 finished up. So that's about it.
Okay, good. So we've got, I want to give time for the audience to ask you anything about either the 2 issues I brought up or any other issues they have in mind. So,
can I, before they ask you a question, can I say one thing?
Yep.
If you'd like to be on my newsletter list, especially leadership, we don't kill you with newsletter information, but we do send something out maybe roughly every 2 months. We'd be delighted. I'll start with the tape, start with when I'm here, and start with out here. We'll start with here. And I'll start with one in the back. Okay. Any questions? Is that an email newsletter? So
What's your email address?
One line per person, yes, it's email, name, address, and phone number. And I'll put one back here as well.
Is that different than your press releases?
It's the same, but we'll also send out videos that are going to say, and they're working on it now, they'll have all the updates that I talked to you about this evening, but in more detail. I was just trying to get everything about 5-minute limit.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to do time management because
Listen,
otherwise.
I just appreciate y'all letting me come out here because Bradley and I understand, Bradley's my chief of staff, we understand we work for y'all. I believe we're in the customer service business. If you call, we work for y'all, y'all literally sign our paycheck. And we try to be your advocate like we were on the apartment project. If a neighborhood doesn't want it, I will always, 100% of the time, write a no letter. A no letter. In general, my natural inclination is to oppose the low-income apartment projects. That's my natural inclination. I believe that markets, in general, should determine what rates people charge private entities, not a subsidy from the federal government. And I certainly don't believe in neighborhood busting, which is what I believe, in general, low-income housing does. It neighborhood busts, and believe me, where I am in Spring Branch, we're surrounded by multifamily, and it's quite challenging.
Wayne, we have a question in the back in the white shirt.
Yeah, I appreciate I was going to ask if you would commit to say your first answer is no, like John Culberson's answers on every funding request. It starts with no and then it gets proven otherwise.
I start with no. I start with no. And y'all would have to say yes, but I start with no.
And then
948452.
Since this is an annual thing, we've all been become more informed about this. You would, and if you hear about these requests, and you may actually hear about them before we do, if you would communicate to our HOA.
You got it.
Precinct chairmen like myself, to the community group like Colleen has put together, if you would communicate so that we could work with you to try to determine, does this make sense or not? Is it neighborhood busting or is it? I mean, we don't want to say we're absolutely opposed all the time.
Right.
We want it to make sense for the neighborhood and the community. So if you commit that you'll communicate that to us, you may be the early warning system for us.
You got it. Bradley heard that. We will commit to proactively reach out to y'all. You're supposed to do it with letters and so forth. And I guess sometimes they don't. They want to try to sneak it in. And that's not right.
Yeah, in the town hall meeting that Colleen hosted in the coalition, we learned a lot of things, and one was to sign up as an HOA, and we're also signed up to get that information, so hopefully we'll get it at the same time, and our emails will be crossing.
Well, in 2000, so the ability for y'all to do that was put into law by an amendment that I carried back in 2007, Bradley, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I carried a bill that year that would allow people to track zip codes, okay, because they weren't being informed, and I couldn't get the bill passed, so I stuck it in with an amendment, and it ended up becoming law. So the digital ability to do that was because I've been dealing with these for a while in the Spring Branch and Bear Creek communities. And, you know, multifamily ages quite rapidly, the structures, and it turns into, it puts pressure on the school resources, the
Sewage.
the water resource, utility resources, and virtually every resource. So in general, you know, my reaction is no. I started no. And you guys would have to be convinced of yes.
Actually, we have a question right here, Colleen.
I have a question. We're on the kind of on the edge of every district, and we're kind of on the edge of yours. Would you be willing to? We could organize it, or you could organize it. Have a town hall for the people that live out in this area to be able to come and ask you questions and have a back and forth.
We will have quite a few town hall meetings. We typically do.
Yeah, but they're usually places where we have to drive into Houston to go there, and we always, because we're on the cusp, we usually we're the ones that always have to drive. If we had it out here, could we work with you to have you come?
You can work with me on that. I'll be glad to. But you know what I really believe in is what we're doing now. These are micro town hall meetings where people can really interact with me and feel, you know, without a big group to really ask me questions that are important to them. So I typically have about 20
Okay, but then we can do it
town
here
hall
and just
meetings.
have for, our little area. That's what we, just being a small one where
I'm
we can
happy to
have
host it,
variety
but
of
it would
country.
be a lot smaller, yeah, if you,
Right.
it might be also of value, is what Colleen says, to have a big one, but that these micro meetings also mean a lot.
Where we have time to go on more topics and things, yeah.
It looks like it might be a good thing to do yearly. We did it, we decided to do it, was it 2 years ago, the last game, I think? So, we may do it more frequently.
And maybe we could have a combo one with Paul and myself and maybe Michael, and really maximize people's time and effort.
All right, so how about questions from the audience? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Dwayne, looking ahead to the next session, back in 2012, the federal government came to Texas with a big bag of money and lots of strings attached and said, here's a bunch of money, Texas. All you have to do is drop TEACs and adopt Common Core. And Governor Perry told them where to stuff the money, and you guys backed him up, and we were all proud. Looking to the next session, this whole process of low-income housing has a lot of parallels. The federal government comes to Texas and says, here's a bag full of tax credits, Texas, and you can give them out to banks and developers who do multifamily low-income housing as long as they follow our rules. And you go down their rules, and basically the rules boil down to this. We want to move a bunch of low-income Democrat voters into traditionally conservative Republican precincts and start changing the balance. What's the chance that if we volunteer, I'll volunteer, to do the research and do the drafting and to get your support in the House and Senate, would you at least think about, you don't got to answer tonight, would you think about sponsoring the bill to get Texas out of this FUBAR system?
Absolutely. That's a no-brainer.
All right, we'll do it.
I have sponsored a lot of legislation, especially in the beginning of when I had such an awful time in Spring Branch dealing with these things. And now they're coming out to less mature areas, in other words, newer areas, because the urban areas have all said, or the urban areas said, no, we don't want any more. Because it locks up that piece of land, by the way, for like 20, 30, and 40 years. That means it can't be redeveloped. And those apartments, because they get lived in so hard, outlive their structural lifespan in no time. And because the developer doesn't come back in and pour more money into it because it's a cash cow, what they do is they end up shifting their cost to the surrounding community. So they shift their lack of maintaining and elevating and keeping it up to par, they shift it to the surrounding community, and that's not right. That's not right. When you're living in an urban area like this, everybody has to be a good neighbor, which is why you have an HOA, because one person's house can affect the value of another person's house, can affect the value of another person's house, and we have to all live practicing the golden rule, which is, doing unto others the way you would have them do unto you.
So you're in.
I'm in.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. My pleasure. I'll even name it after you.
Sure, right.
We can put that in the subject line.
Name it after Eric.
We'll do that.
For volunteers, go ahead, Maria.
I'd like to ask when we had that, when there was that big town hall meeting, was it in March? We had so many people there, it was packed.
Greenhouse.
And you had said, I remember, that we had to write to you to say we are against the low cost housing. If we all still feel the same way, do we still have to write you each time? Or is it when we decide that it would be a great idea to let you know that we think
Well, you
it's a
can
great
communicate,
idea?
you can call me. I just want to hear from the community.
Okay. I'm just wondering if you want everybody to call, because there's a lot of people that won't do that.
I really don't even need a lot of letters. If I get one,
Oh,
letter of
okay.
opposition.
Okay.
My community has spoken,
We're still getting letters on these, literally, still getting them.
Yeah.
So the information is still trickling down. People are like, oh my gosh, we can't do this.
Listen,
Everybody relax.
There is a tool out there called Nextdoor, and Colleen posted a topic back when this was an issue, and to this day, there's still people that are responding. What? There's two? And I almost want to start a new thread because, okay, that's past. We want to get to the future here, but we hear very closely. So, I'll commit to you as I hear from the residents that I'll give you a call, and I've got your information, and we'll be happy to set up another meeting like this, and you can hear from others.
please do. I have a big a top 10 list of the bills that we passed that because of time I couldn't even go into, but I'd be delighted to talk about that and any other things that are on y'all's mind. I just appreciate y'all letting me interrupt your meeting tonight.
Do we have any final questions? Yeah, Mike?
I'd like to know,
Go.
we live across an Amesbury Farm. I didn't know anything about this. I don't know about this low-income housing, and I don't know why I didn't know about it. I'm sorry. I didn't know either. Is there a location that's been discussed, and then what is the status right now?
Well, there's a website. Usually the civic clubs will push the communication through, so I would encourage you to join the email distribution list. Colleen started a website, and Kate Smith, similar to, y'all may know Kate Smith. So there, you can join that. What you want to, Vera, you want to?
It's the West Houston Communities Coalition.
West Houston Communities Coalition, so just Google that and put your name on there.
But if you want to see one going up, just go down Queenston. Before you hit Little York, across the street from that school, that's one going up now.
Are you sure?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I passed by there today and I saw the sign and it said Camden, and I thought that was the nice Camden apartments.
I'm not going to name it Slumville. I'm going to give it a nice name.
I don't know anything about that one.
Barker Cypress, the school. She's asking, is there a school that they're building?
They're building something up there, and someone said to me it was a school for poor children.
That would be, we're KDISD out here.
That is.
No, this is Sci-Fair. This is Sci-Fair.
Yeah, Sci-Fair.
Where's the
Clay Road's the line.
Clay Road is the line. It gets tricky out here.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
It gets very tricky.
Barker
sometimes.
Cypress and what?
That would be a Cypher ISD. That would be a good question to do. Oh, it's a private school.
Oh, I don't know anything about it. Barker Cypress and what? And where?
But Cypher and Katy, usually they're building schools in areas that are just now becoming dense. You know, not areas that are already dense, typically. Okay, one more question?
Yeah, just final question.
One final one.
Yeah, Mike?
About 3 years ago, the legislature passed laws to protect homeowners from HOAs. And it put in rules which were well-founded because some were abusive. But what it also did, and I'm saying this is because lawyers wrote the laws, it requires that a lawyer now files documents which does nothing more than add money to the residents who are already having financial difficulty to pay the bills. And it would seem like the legislature should look at things that if they're going to add costs, they're not a benefit. And in this case, it's add some benefit, it's protected some homeowners from draconian HOAs, but in turn, it's add cost to them that should have never been incurred in the first place. And, you know, at what point does the legislature sit back and look at it from a realistic standpoint, not from a utopian standpoint?
No, that's a good point. You know, we didn't really tackle any HOA legislation this session.
No, it was about 3 years ago.
We wanted to see, sometimes there's unintended consequences to bills. This might have been one of those unintended consequences that we need to
Look at.
needs to look at. So I appreciate you making me aware of that. I have a card if you want to send me an email. Well, listen,
Mike is in charge of our finance, so it's also self-motivated. I mean, he's
Well, I'm
always.
trying to protect the residents from
Yeah.
not adding anything more to their bills than what they already owe if they're already
Yeah.
having difficulties.
Well, I can tell you, I have some fabulous HOAs in my legislative district that when I, with, you know, Silver on the east and Post Oak out here north of I-10, this being a gold standard one,
Thank you.
like a Hearthstone and Twin Lakes, and y'all are definitely gold standard. And I know your residents appreciate the fact that y'all are looking after protecting everybody's economic investment, because a house is typically the most expensive asset a person will ever buy outside of a car. And so HOAs, like Deerfield, do a very important job to ensure that everybody's interests are protected and no one's cost shifting their house to someone else's house, you know, their lack of repair and so forth, or odd cover.
Well, join me in thanking Dwayne for coming out here. Thank you. Y'all are welcome to stay, but we're gonna get on to the regular part of our business.
I just drove in from Austin today,
Yeah.
and I really have a full-time job, and I'll be flying out to Dallas about 5 o'clock a.m. to arrive at 6:43. I'm gonna go spend
But
some
we
time.
appreciate you coming out.
My pleasure.
All right,
Anytime.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Did you
Thanks.
get your email list?